Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. Small businesses in Windsor-Essex are on the hook to pay back loans given out by the federal government during the pandemic, but some say it's still not business as usual. Plus, the City of Windsor is looking for feedback on a bridge that would cross a busy parkway in order to get wildlife safely from one side of the road to the other. And a local economist says Windsor isn't headed for a recession this upcoming year, but people still may be more cautious about their spending. The deadline for small businesses to pay back a pandemic assistance loan from the federal government is fast approaching, but some owners say they still haven't fully bounced back yet. The CBC's TJ Deere reports.
This is one of 3 Windsor buildings owned by Larry Horwitz. He says business hasn't entirely bounced back since the COVID-19 pandemic.
We're maybe 60%, 70, 65% there, but there's a long way to go. And people throughout the business community that I am dealing with, as well as downtown, a lot of small businesses have had a really difficult time.
Horwitz is just one business owner in Windsor who applied for government assistance during the pandemic. The federal government set up the Canada Emergency Business Account, or CBA, to help small businesses across Canada cover some of their costs while they were forced to close during the pandemic. Interest-free loans of up to $60,000 per business were offered. The soft deadline to repay the bulk of it is on January the 18th. Businesses that do pay it back by then can see up to a third of their total loan amount forgiven. Those who don't will have their total loan accrue a 5% interest rate, which will have to be paid in full by the end of 2026. Horwitz isn't sure if he'll pay his loan back by the soft deadline, and as the chair of the Wyandotte Street BIA, he's heard similar tales of woe.
I've spoken to different businesses throughout the BIA, and they're also faced with this. You know, some people were lucky enough to have businesses that did well in COVID, but the majority of businesses were really hurt by COVID, especially small businesses.
One business that has already paid its loan back is Realty Group One Iconic. As a result, a third of their loan was forgiven.
We're not in a difficult situation, I think maybe that some companies are in, because it's always been part of our plan to make sure that that was available to be paid back when it was required.
One local financial institution that helped facilitate loans is the WFCU. Their senior director of retail and small business says they've handled a number of them for clients.
We've had quite a few number of members that have already repaid the loan, which is a wonderful thing to see. But there are some good options for those that are unable to repay, in the fact that they can refinance with their existing CBA institution, or they can take the 5% monthly interest charge and have another additional 3 years to repay the loan.
As for what the business owners want to see happen to the CBA program, Horwitz and McLeod disagree.
The federal government has to either extend the program or forgive the program. You know, small businesses are the backbone of our country.
There should be some consideration about maybe a program that allows it to be extended out on a more interest-free basis, but I'm not a supporter of it not having to be paid back.
TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
There's an updated design for what a bridge across 4 lanes of traffic on Ojibwe Parkway may look like. It's not your ordinary bridge. It's to help wildlife cross the road safely, and it comes with a price tag of $28 million. As Dalton Chen explains, the city is now looking for feedback.
We're in phase 3 of the Ojibwe Parkway Wildlife Crossing project. That means the city is deciding on the design of the vegetation-covered bridge that would allow animals to roam safely from Ojibwe Park to Black Oak Heritage Park. The preferred design now reaches across the 4 lanes of Ojibwe Parkway, plus the train tracks of Essex Terminal Railway. The estimated cost is $28 million, double the cost of the original concept. But wildlife advocates say having the bridge span both the parkway and the train tracks would greatly reduce animal deaths at this location.
I think it's a great idea. The Ojibwe complex is home to lots of endangered species, species at risk, and rare species. And unfortunately, there has been lots of isolation within land. It's important that it extends past the train tracks. A lot of people don't realize that there is quite a bit of mortality from trains, especially with turtles. For one example, rail mortality is almost just as high as car mortality.
Wildlife advocates believe the bridge would be used by native species such as white-tailed deer. eastern coyotes and wild turkeys. The structure could also be crucial for threatened and endangered reptiles such as Blanding's turtles and Butler's garter snakes. The current consultation includes a public information session here at the Ojibwe Nature Center on January 18th. The public can also comment online on the city's website until January 26th.
If you go to the city's website and search environmental assessments, it's pretty easy to find that way. We encourage people, if you can't make it out in person, please come on there, take a look at the slides, and add your comments. And we really take those to heart, which is evidenced by the fact that we're coming back now with a different design than before. We do listen to what people say, so we want to hear from you.
It's hoped that the preferred design will go before City Council in May of this year, but the crossing is still a long way from reality. The cost hasn't been budgeted by the city, and there's no prospective construction timeline. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Stellantis says it will be reevaluating its auto show participation in North America due to what the company is calling a challenging automotive market. The company says future participation in North American auto shows will be looked at on a case-by-case basis and wants to be as efficient as possible in its media spending. The company will be represented at the Canadian International Auto Show in Toronto, but it's GTA dealers that will be footing the bill. Stellantis did not answer whether it would be at the Detroit Auto Show. The president of Auto Forecast Solutions says some companies are scaling back.
It really hasn't had the fanfare and splash that auto shows of the old days have done, where media really is invested and really pushing it. The messaging, I don't think, is clear, and it doesn't justify the investment anymore, unfortunately.
A local economist says Windsor is likely not headed for a recession in 2024, but unfortunately that doesn't mean people won't feel the pinch or be more cautious about their spending this year. He says it's boom time for people working in the skilled trades industry because of new investments coming in. Two big ones, the Nexar EV battery facility and the Gordie Howe International Bridge, which are both under construction.
And so there's feeling that a recession could come. But like the Conference Board of Canada before the end of the year said, Windsor's going to have one of the strongest economies in Canada, and we're building a bridge, we're building a battery plant, we're trying to build homes, we're trying to build, infrastructure, and, we're attracting a lot of people to our community, which should buttress our community from recession in our region. But it doesn't mean that people won't feel the pinch this year going forward.
One of the questions on a lot of people's minds for the new year is what will happen to the housing market in 2024? Will prices come down? Will sales pick up? Will the pace of new home construction increase? Mike Crawley spoke with some experts to find out what they're predicting.
The real estate market in this province right now is in a deep slump. Stats reveal that the number of homes actually selling is far below how many are listed.
That's not to say that supply is overly high in Ontario's market. It's just that sales levels are just so darn low.
We're talking about multi-decade, 20, 24-year lows in individual home sales, like the number of homes sold.
Industry forecasts predict this sluggishness to continue through the first part of the year, at least until there are significant cuts to mortgage rates.
The real question that we're going to be faced with in 2024 is how fast will interest rates decline, how quickly.
Another trend to watch for as the new year unfolds, whether sellers will get nervous and start asking for less.
It's a combination of these high prices and high interest rates that is keeping a lot of buyers out of the market right now.
The condo sector is in particularly bad shape, especially the pre-sale market, dominated by investors.
Over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll probably see more investors unloading properties just because they can't afford to have so much debt at today's interest rates.
Those interest rates are also dampening the pace of new home construction because developers face higher financing costs. Throw in pricier building materials and a labor crunch, it's all dragging the Ford government further off track of its target for 1.5 million new homes by 2031.
Canada-wide and Ontario, of course, we're expecting housing starts to fall in 2024. So the pace of housing starts will kind of come off.
We need more housing supply, but supply's declining when we need it, and our population continues to boom.
Huge increase in population, ongoing increase in population, and reduced housing starts. It's a recipe for disaster.
Meanwhile, cities around the province have given the green light to housing projects totaling tens of thousands of new homes. Yet when you get a peek behind the billboards, construction is yet to begin. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Mississauga.
A new survey commissioned by the Ontario Council of Hospital Unions finds many healthcare workers are experiencing poor mental health at work. Their union says this is due to understaffing and poor working conditions. Clara Pasica reports.
You're working twice as hard, like you're constantly overworked.
This Toronto registered nurse says healthcare workers have never had to do more on a shift.
Nurses, you're constantly on your feet, missing breaks, missing washroom times, like, people holding their urine in your bladder for long hours just because they have so much to do.
Before I get into the results,
hundreds of healthcare workers are feeling the same.
Many workers are breaking down and crying, knowing their patients are being shortchanged. They cry before their shifts, they cry after their shifts, they cry during their lunch breaks, they even cry at home as workplace stress bleeds into their lives.
Results of a Nanos telephone survey of more than 750 hospital workers across the province show 41% of workers dread coming to work. 49% of respondents say they have anxiety at work. 62% say they are exhausted. 2 in 5 are leaving or somewhat considering leaving their jobs in the next year. The union and the NDP are calling on the government to address these issues by better funding the healthcare system, paying workers more, and hiring more of them full-time.
So you are what your record says you are. This is unacceptable.
The psychiatrist says hiring more workers is key, but so are programs to address high levels of mental health concerns in these workplaces.
Very scalable, not particularly costly, and certainly not very difficult to implement. And I think now more than ever, given what we're now hearing with this survey, which is not the only survey like this, many of them like this, there's an urgency that we cannot afford to have this not going on much longer without being addressed.
A spokesperson for the Ontario government said 15,000 new nurses were added last year, and the government is making it easier for nurses trained elsewhere to work here. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Emergency rooms across Canada are struggling to deal with a surge in respiratory illnesses like COVID, RSV, and the flu. But the situation is being made worse by major staffing shortages. It's led to overflowing hospitals and long wait times. Lauren Pelly has more on the story.
You're gonna sleep right after, huh? Of course you are.
While many Canadians relaxed over the holidays,
Not too much.
Joey Salmingo took his newborn to a crowded hospital with a fever.
It took an hour just to see a triage nurse.
Oh, I know. And it was 7 more hours until Salmingo's son was admitted to a bed.
So as the hours just went by, obviously the frustration, the anger is setting in.
Patients across the country keep facing those kinds of hours-long waits. In Quebec, provincial data shows dozens of hospital ERs are overflowing. And the average waiting time on a stretcher hit 18 hours by Tuesday afternoon.
This is the worst the healthcare system has been ever. We're seeing patients in stretchers laying there for days on end.
This nurse in Montreal says long waits are tied to ongoing staff shortages and pressure from the usual respiratory viruses, plus COVID as well.
COVID is rampant throughout the hospitals, throughout every unit.
At St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, upwards of 10% of patients on the wards are COVID positive.
It's often COVID intersecting with other illnesses and making people sick enough to end up in hospital.
He says most patients falling seriously ill with either COVID or influenza are also people who didn't get the latest vaccines. Federal data shows only 15% of the population got an updated COVID shot this fall.
Our vaccination rates across most populations and age groups, and in particular in children, are lower than we have seen in the past.
Doctors say there's still plenty of time to get those updated shots. COVID is still circulating, and the flu season in much of eastern Canada isn't expected to peak for several weeks. That means a busy winter ahead, and the more Canadians who can stay out of hospital, the better. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Now that our annual Sounds of the Season food drive is finished, we have a final tally to share with you. Because of the support from residents and organizations in our community, we were able to help raise just over $20,000 in cash and 8,000 kilograms of food. That's more than 17,000 pounds. All of this will go to the UHC hub of opportunities to help those most in need in our community. Beautiful look at the tower camera there tonight. In just a few hours, we could see some flurries. Your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Joining us now live for weather is Nick Cernkovich. Nick, you've had 3 days to come up with a New Year's resolution. Do you have something good for us, or are you the resolution's kind of not for you?
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, for me, I'm not big on resolutions. There's a saying that I like that says one day or day one. So I just feel like you take it as day one and you go for it. But if I were to pick one, it would be to remember my keys when I get to the building. Because I always get out of my car, I walk to the building, I get to the office, and I realize I left my keys in the car. So.
And then you're calling your poor coworker, and can you come get me? And you're not making friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that, if I had to pick one, that would be it. But yeah.
I feel the same way as you. I am not a New Year's resolution person, but I will say, for whatever reason, September for me is kind of when I feel like I should change things up, I think, for the start of
Yeah.
school. I haven't been to the start of school in years, but September, the start of September still really sticks with me.
Yeah, and you know, we were having this conversation the other day with someone else as well, and it's like, as humans, we like this sort of switch. Like, we like clean starts, clean finishes, right? I think that's why Hollywood movies always have a clean finish to them and whatever else. So I think it's just a place for us to start and kind of and set ourselves, reset ourselves. So there you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's coming up in weather?
Well, we're looking at colder temperatures. Now, granted, not as cold as they could be. Some other areas in southern Ontario certainly seeing colder temperatures in place. But even in the Windsor area, we're going to see temperatures dropping, and in particular through the overnights. Now, right now we're looking at 1 degree. In Windsor, 1 in Sarnia as well, 2 in Goderich. The winds, actually not that bad. We're looking at winds here around 10 to 20 kilometers per hour. They will shift, though, to the northwest, and we're going to see wind gusts tonight of about 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. That's going to drop not just the temperatures with that northwesterly wind, but the wind chills as well. There's a look at current wind chills. Generally, we don't talk about wind chills when the temperatures are above the 0 degree mark, but if you were to sort of extrapolate from that a little bit, this is more or less what it feels like outside right now. It is plunging, though, through the overnight, and again, the reason for this is the winds will shift to the northwest. We'll see the overnight temperatures drop. We'll also see the wind chills drop as well. Some flurries in place right now. You can actually see them scattered here. And this is part of that cold air that's moving into the region. The cloud cover is going to start to move out, but before it does, we've still got some flurries in place. Most of what you're going to see is coming off the lee of Lake Huron here. So you'll get a little bit of it down in the Windsor area. A lot of it, though, kind of Goderich down towards Sarnia and London. That with the wind shift, and then it kind of dissipates as we move through tomorrow afternoon and then into Friday as well. Lots of sunshine, though, so that's a bit of a silver lining in all of this. Any of the cloud cover generally staying to the north and the east. So pretty sunny skies, but cooler temperatures in place. In terms of that snowfall or snow flurries, as I mentioned, really just kind of trace across the Windsor area. I mean, if we see them at all, anything that we see will be about 1 to 2, maybe 3 centimeters of snow in the lee of Lake Huron. Overnight temperatures, they are starting to fall. Here's a look at the overnight temps across the region. Windsor down around -3. Again, as I mentioned, it's colder as you move toward the east and the northeast, but with the wind chills tonight, we're still looking at wind chills in the Windsor area at their lowest point of around -10 to -12. Now, that's what you're going to wake up to tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow through the afternoon, we're looking at highs of about -2 degrees, mainly sunny skies there. Still looking at wind chills, though, close to that minus double-digit range. -1 on Friday. Again, these overnight lows a little bit on the cool side. We pop up above the 0 mark as we head toward the weekend. There are a few flurries on Sunday to finish off the weekend, but sunshine for a few.
-10 with the wind chill. That is chilly.
Yeah. I think I said it yesterday, but it's a bit of a reality check from what we were used to recently.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Thanks so much for that, Nick.
You bet.
The fitness industry is calling for a tax credit. We tell you why coming up. There are growing fears that Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza could expand into a regional conflict. A drone strike that killed a senior Hamas official in Lebanon yesterday has led to threats of retaliation against Israel from Hezbollah, a Hamas ally. The Israeli government, however, has not acknowledged responsibility for the attack. Israel's forces have intensified their offensive in Gaza. Heavy fighting has spread across the southern and central parts of the territory. Israel says it has destroyed tunnels underneath one of Gaza's biggest hospitals. The fitness industry is calling for a national tax credit to help get Canadians active. They say the healthcare system suffers when Canadians are out of shape. But as Renee Filipponi explains, a tax credit incentive may not help those who need it most.
Awesome job! At Orange Theory Fitness in Edmonton, it's all about motivation. Get those feet moving! The fitness industry, hit hard by the pandemic, is still recovering, and now inflation is weighing on it too.
But at the end of the day, it's costing them dollars, and if they, if they're thinking that they don't have the dollars to put food on their table, it's one of the things that does unfortunately have to go. And so it's the number one reason that we have people quitting today.
Yeah. The fitness industry is calling on the federal government to include gym memberships as a medical expense on their taxes to make it more affordable.
Any incentive is an incentive to get people started.
They also point to research that working out improves health and can reduce the strain on the healthcare system.
We are in a healthcare crisis, and there's a 2023 report published in the Canadian Journal of Public Health that actually states that in Canada, due to sedentary behavior, we are losing $2.2 billion.
A tax credit is already offered in Newfoundland for things like swimming lessons and gym memberships, valued at $348 per family. Ottawa says it's committed to helping Canadians become more active, but when asked about a tax rebate, it pointed instead to its $10 million investment in programs like Participaction to increase daily physical activity.
On some level, does this line the pockets of big corporations?
This SFU researcher says a tax credit won't necessarily help low-income Canadians who often struggle to find time for the gym or can't pay the costs up front.
If we think about, beyond the scope of, let's say, low-income Canadians, we're also thinking about, well, how do we ensure that the people that are going to the gym are actually getting the long-term benefits of this? How do we track that?
For these gym regulars struggling with the soaring cost of living, any break is welcome.
This is going to be so much less money for the fitness I spend, and so much more money I can put into groceries and household spending.
Work for that distance. Helping to pick up the fitness pace this year. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
London Zoo is kicking off the new year by taking stock of all the animals in their care.
They're on their way. Sorry, it's very quick.
Every zoo inhabitant here will be counted and registered over the next few days. There are those who line up quietly for the annual head count, but it's hard to expect creatures of all stripes to behave. Some showed no signs of taking things seriously, and while some other striped creatures stayed curious, there were some head-scratching moments. London Zoo is home to more than 300 different species, all adding up to about 14,000 residents. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.